21 criminal charges, authorised by the UK Crown Prosecution Service. Confirmed in May 2025. Human trafficking, rape, controlling and coercive behaviour. At the same moment those charges were being prepared, the man they concerned was posting videos to hundreds of millions of followers, telling them he was the most persecuted man on earth. Here is the contradiction at the centre of this story. He built one of the most visible personal brands in internet history, a brand built explicitly on dominance, wealth, and the question is what it was actually built on. To understand how Andrew Tate became one of the most searched humans on the internet, you have to start not with social media, but with a kickboxing gym in Luton, England, and a television studio in Borehamwood. Tate competed professionally in kickboxing from the mid-2000s. He won multiple ISKA World Championship titles across different weight classes between 2009 and 2014. That record was real. The discipline was real. And the persona it produced, the man who wins through force of will, became the foundation of everything that followed. In 2016, he appeared briefly on the UK reality. He was removed from the house within days after footage emerged the producers found unacceptable. He has disputed the characterization of those events. What is not disputed, the removal generated coverage. And coverage, for Tate, was currency. Over the following years, he relocated, first to Eastern Europe, eventually settling primarily in Romania. He later stated publicly that he chose Romania in part because of his belief that local authorities would be less likely to pursue sexual assault allegations. That statement was made by Tate himself in a video that circulated widely online. It is at the visible surface, social media content, motivational messaging, a brand identity built around luxury cars, combat sports, and an explicit philosophy of male dominance. Beneath that surface, a series of commercial operations. The most significant was Hustlers University, later rebranded as The Real World, an online subscription platform that at its peak was reported by multiple established media outlets to have accumulated over 100,000 paying members at fees of approximately $49 per month. The platform recruited affiliates aggressively, offering commissions to members who grew. It functioned, in structural terms, as a referral-driven content business. There were also webcam studio operations. Romanian prosecutors would later allege these were central to the criminal enterprise. At this stage, they were presented publicly as legitimate adult content businesses. By 2022, the scale of the online presence had become measurable in terms that major platforms could not ignore. In July of that year, data analysts reported that Tate's name was being searched on Google more frequently than either Donald Trump or Kim Kardashian. That figure was cited by multiple. He had, by any metric, achieved a level of cultural penetration that almost no individual without a traditional media infrastructure had ever reached. The content driving that reach was not subtle. Videos circulated in which Tate described women as property, discussed why men should bear no accountability for infidelity, and outlined what he called a system for controlling romantic partners. The algorithm rewarded the controversy. Engagement metrics climbed. The subscriber counts climbed. The subscription revenue climbed. And then, at the precise moment, the empire appeared to be. In December 2022, activist Greta Thunberg posted a response to one of Tate's social media videos. Tate replied with a lengthy message that included, in the background of a video he recorded to post online, a pizza box from a Romanian delivery chain. Romanian authorities, who had already been conducting surveillance operations, used that footage to confirm his location in Bucharest. Within days, on the 29th of December 2022, DIICOT, Romania's Directorate for Investigating Organised Crime and Terrorism raided a property in the Ilfov County area outside Bucharest. Tate and his brother. The initial detention was extended. Romanian law permits extended pre-trial detention under specific conditions, and prosecutors successfully argued those conditions were met. The brothers were held for approximately 3 months before being placed under house arrest in April 2023. Now, here is what no one outside the investigation had fully understood until the indictment documents began to emerge. The scale of the alleged operation was not limited to a handful of victims. Romanian prosecutors alleged a structured criminal organization, what the indictment characterized as a group formed for the purpose of human trafficking, with victims recruited using what investigators described as the so-called loverboy method. This is a documented recruitment technique in which perpetrators establish romantic relationships with victims before gradually introducing coercion, control, and ultimately exploitation. The indictment, filed by DIICOT, alleged that victims were recruited in Romania, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Prosecutors alleged the victims were then subjected to physical and psychological coercion and forced to produce content for online platforms, with the proceeds controlled by the organization. The number of alleged victims named in the Romanian indictment was 7. The alleged conduct spanned multiple years. At this point, and this is the detail that reframes everything that came before, investigators were not looking at a social media personality who had made offensive statements. They were, according to their own filed documents, looking at an alleged criminal infrastructure that had been operating in parallel with the public brand for years. The webcam operations that had been publicly acknowledged were, prosecutors alleged, not merely adult content businesses. They were, according to the indictment, coercive enterprises in which victims were controlled through debt bondage, romantic manipulation, and threats. Tate and his legal representatives denied the charges. His lawyers argued consistently that the relationships were consensual and that the business operations were lawful. Those denials are part of the record. But the Romanian legal process continued regardless. And in June 2023, the formal indictment was issued. The charges included human trafficking. The case was referred to trial. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, a parallel process had been moving through the Crown Prosecution Service. In January 2024, the CPS announced that it had authorised 21 charges against Andrew Tate, including charges of rape and human trafficking. In May 2025, the CPS confirmed those charges, a threshold decision that meant prosecutors had determined the evidence met the standard required to proceed. The empire had not collapsed. The platforms were still generating revenue. The followers were still watching. But the legal architecture closing around the Tate operation, the major social media platforms had, in fact, already moved. In August 2022, months before the Romanian raid, Meta, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram all removed or restricted Tate's accounts, citing violations of their community standards and policies around hate speech and content that degrades women. Twitter, later rebranded as X, had previously suspended his account in 2017 for comments about sexual assault victims. Under new ownership, that account was reinstated in late 2022. The bans did not eliminate the reach. Studies conducted by media research organizations found that Tate attributed content continued to circulate at scale even after the primary account removals. The algorithm had already done its work. But here is what the platform bans did accomplish. They severed the most direct pipeline between Tate's content and new, younger audiences. Research published by organizations studying online radicalization documented that a significant proportion of Tate's most engaged audience consisted of adolescent males. The concern raised by educators, child safeguarding organizations, and law enforcement agencies in multiple countries UK schools reported incidents in which students were repeating Tate's language verbatim in classrooms. The Metropolitan Police and other UK forces issued guidance to schools about the influence of the content on young people's attitudes toward women and consent. Those documented harms sit alongside the legal proceedings. They are separate, but they are part of the same record. In Romania, the trial process moved through its procedural stages. The Tate brothers remained under judicial supervision, with travel restrictions imposed. Asset seizures were conducted. The total value of assets seized was reported by Romanian state media and established international outlets, though the precise final figure remained subject to ongoing legal proceedings. In parallel, civil litigation began to accumulate. Individuals in multiple jurisdictions filed complaints with law enforcement. The documented number of formal complaints grew as the public profile of the case increased, and more alleged victims came forward through official channels. And then came the detail that collapsed any remaining ambiguity about the seriousness of the UK proceedings. In May 2025, the Crown Prosecution Service confirmed the 21 charges authorised in January 2024 remained live and were proceeding. The charges included rape, human trafficking, and controlling and coercive behaviour. The CPS confirmation meant that the threshold test, whether there was sufficient evidence and whether prosecution was in the public interest, had been met on all 21 counts. 21 charges, across 2 jurisdictions, against a man who, at the height of his reach, had more monthly searches than almost any other individual on the planet. The brand had been built on the premise. The legal record, as it stood in mid-2025, suggested that premise was being tested in the most consequential way possible. As of mid-2025, Andrew Tate had not been convicted in either Romania or the United Kingdom. The Romanian trial was ongoing. The UK charges had been authorised and confirmed, but proceedings had not concluded. That distinction matters. It is the distinction between a documented legal process and a final verdict, and this channel does not collapse that gap. What can be stated plainly, the Romanian indictment is a public document. The DIICOT charges are a matter of court record. The CPS authorisation of 21 charges in the United Kingdom is confirmed by official announcement. These are not allegations, sir. The financial scale of the operation, while not fully adjudicated, can be partially reconstructed from what is publicly documented. The real-world platform, at its reported peak of over 100,000 subscribers, paying approximately $49 per month, would have been generating in the region of $60 million annually in subscription revenue alone, before affiliate commissions and other costs. That figure is a calculation from reported subscriber numbers, not an audited account. It is offered here as context for scale, not as a verified total. The broader cultural impact is harder to quantify, but no less real. Multiple academic studies and journalism investigations documented the spread of Tate's content among young male audiences across Europe, North America, and beyond. The UK government's own safeguarding guidance referenced the influence of his material on adolescent attitudes. Teachers, social workers, and youth organisations in multiple countries filed formal accounts of the content's effects in their professional environments. The platform architecture that enabled this reach, the referral incentives, the algorithmic amplification, the deliberate controversy as an engagement mechanism, did not originate with Tate. These are features of the attention economy that existed before him and will exist after him. What the Tate case demonstrated, with unusual clarity, is how those features can be exploited not merely for profit, but, according to prosecutors in 2 countries, as a recruitment and concealment mechanism for alleged serious crime. For the alleged victims in this case. The women named in the Romanian indictment, the individuals whose accounts form the basis of the UK charges, The legal process represents something specific. The possibility that what happened to them will be formally examined, formally recorded, and formally adjudicated by courts. That process was not fast. The Romanian investigation began years before the December 2022 raid. The UK process moved through its stages over more than 2 years. Legal proceedings of this complexity, crossing international borders and involving organised crime statutes, do not move quickly. The one lesson the documented record of this case makes available, stated plainly, not preached, is this: a public brand built on the performance of impunity is not the same thing as actual impunity. And the gap between the two is where accountability eventually